After the Civil War ended in 1865, approximately 100 years prior to James Meredith's admittance to the University of Mississippi, slaves gained their freedom, but not their rights. Throughout these several decades until Meredith's adulthood, blacks of the South faced racism and discrimination in jobs, school, and day-to-day life. Segregation was the norm until well into the 20th century. Meredith's court case, protesting unfair segregation, was not one of a kind. Dred Scott versus Sanford, Plessy versus Ferguson, and Brown versus Board could be credited to giving Meredith the confidence to pursue fighting for an equal education. Until the 1970s, the majority of Mississippi was segregated. A catalyst to the integration of Mississippi was James Meredith's attendance to Ole Miss. Meredith was not alone in his fight, because the 1960s marked a glorious decade for the civil rights movement. During the time of Meredith's attendance to Ole Miss, the chaotic counterculture was in full swing. Additionally, prior to Meredith's application to attend Ole Miss, he served in the Air Force during the Korean War, but at the time of his attendance, it was the Vietnam War. The war so greatly warped the public's opinion about everything that for about a decade, Americans were overwhelmed with an overdose of chaos. This disorder set the stage for major revolution and reform. Therefore, most of the social reform in American history took place from 1960 to 1969. The cause of James Meredith risking his life for equal education is primarily his belief that every man is entitled to higher education in his own state. Meredith believed he should not have to move several hundred miles north to gain equal higher education just because of his race. However, the effect of his application into an all-white Southern school was not so simple. 1961 to 1965 marked an unusually fiery time period for Oxford, Mississippi, and also for James Meredith. An immediate result was tensions were skyrocketing throughout the campus, the state, and the South. An additional result of Meredith's enrolling into the University of Mississippi was following his Supreme Court case, once the verdict was read, and as he took his first steps onto the campus as a student, the civil rights movement only grew stronger, and it paved way for the complete integration of Mississippi. The reaction to the court's verdict to force Ole Miss to allow James Meredith to attend the school was largely, yet not entirely, pure disbelief and outrage. The governor stated that he'd rather shut the school down than see it integrated. The students, faculty, and staff united in demonstrations protesting Meredith's admittance. Meredith's uphill battles with the university, plus his post-verdict fight to attend the school, was news nationally and internationally. Meredith's situation was even directly addressed publicly by Attorney General Robert Kennedy. The rest of the country was in complete disbelief at the actions of the governor and those protesting Meredith's being educated at Ole Miss. With such a large reaction, revolution and reform were the only feasible results. In Meredith integrating the University of Mississippi, he unknowingly ignited the fuse of the bomb of a revolution soon to follow in Mississippi. Not only did James Meredith officially integrate a historically all-white Southern school, but with all of the news coverage he received with his court case and with his fight, Meredith fueled and aided strengthening the national civil rights movement. Through much perseverance and poise, James Meredith pushed through the 100-plus-year-old boundaries, which ultimately resulted in the complete integration of the school. The Reformation, which was not seen right away, but happened slowly, can be seen through the racial acceptance associated with today's society. Unfortunately, racism is still seen today, but even in Mississippi, there is complete integration, and discrimination is seen on a drastically smaller scale. Today, 20.5% of Ole Miss's student population is African American. That's approximately 3,000 students. Also, although we Americans cannot undo generations of hurt and wrongdoing, we can recognize the injustice and reflect the complete democracy our government was set up on in our everyday life. At the time, Meredith's case made national news, but to some, it was just that, one of many civil rights court cases. However, it was much more than that. James Meredith was a very intelligent man that was well qualified to attend the university, but was initially denied due to his race. He was eventually able to cross the color barrier, yet he still faced several hardships while at the university. But for Meredith, it was his education. It was worth fighting for. He was willing to risk everything, even possibly his life, to gain it. Meredith's actions should be looked upon as a lesson to all who take education as a burden rather than a privilege. Yet his actions and his courage are not only a lesson, but are significant in history because he was able to overcome his race. He was able to attend an all-white university despite being black. He is James Meredith.
After the marshals had secured their positions, James Meredith was flown into Oxford Airport and driven to a secret location at Ole Miss. The crowds didn't know where he was, but they knew he was on campus. And at 8 o'clock, just as the president went on the air, Ole Miss turned into a battlefield.